I'm going to start with the learning sponsors as we get gathered. A year of learning, friends of Malskotsky, Moshe Zelig, Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman, and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chanabat Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler, in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen, those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malka Bat Meshulam Yisachar, Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinzer Bat Yosef Chaim Bachava, Hanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Vachana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi V'Tzipora, Yisur Ben Yoel Moshe HaKohen Vachana, Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Gutta Bat Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Chaim, Marsha Brana, in memory of her husband, Harav Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel. Have a month of learning by Reuven and Susan Podolsky, in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Pinchas. A week of learning by Michael and Sharon Glass, in memory of his father, Yitzchak Tzvi Ben Yechel Michel. Chaim Aber, in memory of his father, Aaron Meir. Also today, the 23rd, a day of learning by Cheryl and David Wiskowski, in memory of her father, Baruch Ben Shmaryahu. And Hashem is having Aliyah, Crank Rafia, Velti Yeshir Shemat Aliyah, the Chol Israel, a good Gebenchtjahr. Okay, a reminder that money goes either to Heshi or to Mel, $15 due no later than October 31st, okay, in order to give Michael some opportunity to purchase the breakfast for our seal. Okay, I will be writing something up and putting it in the bulletin. Okay.
We're gonna have the same Friday morning.
Friday morning.
At this year. At this year.
Yeah.
We've done that before.
Right.
We'll lock the doors so schnorrers don't.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember who it was, but I don't remember who it was, but I think it was some of the people who come just on Shabbos to the dough.
What?
That may have been who it was.
No, people do it all the time. I catch guys taking coffee and make them give Ashley $1. People think everything is free. And when I caught a guy taking, Rabbi Yasker told me not to say anything. So Heshi didn't get.
Okay, so where do we want to, I want to just go back a little bit. All right. I know. Amar Rabbi Chama Bar Hanina on the very bottom of Ayin Amud Beis, last line, right? When it was saying that that converts are like Sapachat and Sa'et, okay? That as Michael pointed out to us yesterday, that a question of the same way it becomes attached, okay? So in a sense, Gerim are attached. I heard a nice word on it, just real quick. You could explain that in a negative sense, that Gerim aren't as good in terms of observance, and therefore people who become friendly with them, attached to them, associate with them, their level of observance would decline. And then the exact same person flipped it and gave a different vort, okay, based on other Rishonim. I said, no, the implication is that Gerim are, exactly, that Gerim can be more observant and more
but the actual shot is that the Gerim were subject to the death penalty,
Right,
and
okay,
their
fine.
teachers were also.
Fine.
So it was like risky.
That was
to
the
take
shot that you're sharing, right? I understand. Okay. Okay, I'm just sharing the one that I heard, the addition one yesterday afternoon. Okay, when I was preparing for today's. All right. Okay, so what happens? All right, so he said there from Rabbi Chama bar Achanina, Kadosh Baruch Hu mitaher, right? When he purifies Shvatim, Shivto shel Levi mitaher tchila. Tribe of Levi will be purified first. Shenema v'yeshev mitzareif. Okay. By the way, this struck me interesting. Remember, there's during the high holidays. All right, there is right mitzareif. Right. All right. There's a
smelter.
Right. Okay. Mitzaref, mitaher, right? Umitaher kesef v'tiher b'nei Levi. They purify tribe of Levi first. Zikeko tam. Why? Because he has need for them, right? Kizahav ukakesef. Vayu Lashem magishay mincha b'tzedakah.
And the gold and silver are the Kohanim and Levi.
Right. So what? Well, that's could be. I don't know. All right. So that's the case. But okay, that's where we stopped yesterday. Okay, that you purify the silver and therefore similarly purify the tribes. Amar Rebbe, says Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. This is to finish up this discussion. Kesef mitaher mamzerim. That money is able to bring purification to mamzerim. Why? Shnamar vayeshev mitzaref mitaher kesef. That I bring the same pasuk, that he offers Hashem's offerings, right, with the gold and silver. My magishay mincha b'tzedakah. What does it therefore mean when we say that he brings offerings with righteousness? V'ha'amar Rabbi Yitzchak, says Rabbi Yitzchak, tzedakah aseh HaKadosh Baruch Hu im Yisrael shemishpacha shenitma'a nitma'a. Okay. That those families who may have originally been have mamzerus in them, the result is with the appropriate funds, they find the right shidduch, and eventually the marriages of the families intertwine, and ultimately the family with mamzerut becomes mixed in with other families, and therefore their status is
Lost.
What happens to a family with a mamzer today?
Well, we're going to continue with the Gemara, okay? And we're going to see that there's a difference of opinion whether this should be made public or not. Okay? Whether mamzeret should be made public or not.
If it's for sure, yes. If it's a suffix,
Well,
no.
I'm just saying. I understand, but that halacha didn't come right here in the Gemara. It came after the Rishoni.
No, the Gemara will talk about.
That's why I said there's a difference of opinion, okay? And ultimately, okay, the Gemara, the halacha had to come to some sort of a position, okay?
And
but not everything is immediately found in the Gemara. It's also based on how Rishonim interpret it as well. Okay, that's simply my point. And therefore, the halacha in that case came to a compromise. Okay, that's what it did. Okay, if it's well known, okay, then it's shared in a certain context. Okay, and families know not to. Okay, if it's not well known, it's not publicized.
And then also, if once the mamzerus issues are sort of lost to history, I'll bet you no one in this room knows his great grandfather. So once it's lost, then we have a cheskes kashrus on everybody.
Okay, that's why I said it's basically a compromise position.
You have to wait a long time.
Okay. Gufa, let's come back to our Gemara, gentlemen. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. We're going to get to some geography today too, and I have extra maps in case people need. Okay. All right. Oh, no, that was a good part of the shiur that yesterday morning that I listened to. Amar Rav Yehuda Marshmo, he says, Kol Aratzot Esa Eretz Yisrael, all the other lands are like mixed dough, so to speak, compared to Eretz Yisrael. Ve'eretz Yisrael Esa Bavel. And the land of Israel is like a mixed dough, a mixture. In other words, of people with various yichasin, various genealogical, right? Because remember, it said 10 categories, okay? And we had the whole discussion whether Ezra sort of forced them or they came on their own,
What
but
the
that
screening
many of
was.
those who were of questionable category came to Eretz Yisrael, which allowed Bavel, and Rashi said it clearly, okay, to be like well-sifted flour. Okay, so that's why. Bimei Rebbe, in the time of Rebbe, Bikshula Asod Babal Asa LaEretz Yisrael. Okay, the time of Rebbe, there were those who sought to, how shall I best put it, compare, okay, to make to switch it. Let's put it that way. To say Bavel is
higher.
right, to make Bavel the mixed compared to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Amar Laho, and of course Rebbe, remember, originally came from Bavel.
200 years earlier as
Well,
Hillel.
okay, his ancestry was such that it came. All right, Amar Lahen, he said to them, Chutzimatem Mesamim li be'enai. It's like you're sticking thorns in my eyes. All right, if you're going to say that the yichus of people from Bavel is less than that of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Ritzonchem yitapel imachem Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama. Okay, is your willing such that I'll let Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama, okay, deal with this situation.
Because he's pure
Okay,
Israeli.
what happens? Nitpal imahem. Okay, what did he do? All right, he brought up the issue with them. Rabbi Chanina Bar Chama Amar lehem, and thus he said to them, Kach mekublani mi Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi. This is what I received as a Masorah from Rabbi Yishmael bar Rabbi Yossi, she'amar mishum avi, who said in the name of his father. Now, Rabbi Yossi, his father, was really considered almost
pure Israeli.
not only pure, but he was also considered one of the Gedolei Hador in his time. Okay, so we're not talking about right. Kol artzot Esa leEretz Yisrael. All of the lands are like a mixture, a dough. Okay, to Eretz Yisrael. VeEretz Yisrael Esa leBavel. That was the Masorah. Okay. B'yamei Rabbi Pinchas, in the time of Rabbi Pinchas, Bikshula Asot Bavel Esa leEretz Yisrael. So again, in the time of Rabbi Pinchas, they wanted to make Bavel secondary in terms of yichus status. Okay, to Eretz Yisrael. Amar lehem la'avadav. He said to the servants there, K'she'ani omer shnei dvarim b'veit hamidrash. He says, when I'm going to say two things in the base of midrash, and we need to understand here, okay, that okay, that okay, well, I'm going to phrase it a little differently, right? He says, I'm going to say some rather
Controversial
issues of import that not everybody's going to be happy with. And I want you to, a quick getaway after I make this statement in the base of Midrash. Okay? Right? K'shani omer shnei dvarim b'Beit HaMidrash, when I say two things in the Beit HaMidrash, taluni ba'arisa v'rotzu, okay, put me in my wagon and let's get me out of there. Okay? Ki ayil, when he went up, amar lehem, he said to them as follows. Number one, ein shchita la'of min haTorah. There is no shchita applied to birds in the Torah. Okay? Implication being that Malika is a
It's
not,
not shchita.
it's not shchita. Okay, all right. So we're not going to get verhitzed about that issue.
Well, no, it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
mitzvah.
Right. Okay. Ad yadve ukama ba. Okay. All right. So they looked at and they examined it. They discussed it. Amar laho, he said to them. Further, here's the second one. Kol aratzot esa le'ole Eretz Yisrael. All the other lands are mixed to Eretz Yisrael. Ve'eretz Yisrael esa leBavel. And indeed, Eretz Yisrael is mixed compared to Bavel. In other words, the yichus status that Bavel maintained was the highest. Okay? Not luhu barisa v'ratzu. They took him, put him in his wagon, and they left town. Left the area. Ratzu acharav v'lo higyuhu. They ran after him and they couldn't catch up to him. Yashvu badku. They sat and they examined the situation. Ad shehigiu l'sakana. In other words, some of the rabbis began to examine the information in great detail to the point that it put their own lives in danger. That's the implication here of the Gemara. Okay? Upirshu. And then they dropped the subject. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan. Okay? Hechla. By the temple. In other words, he's taking a major vow here. Biyadenuhi. It's in our hands to decide how we want to handle these situations. Aval ma'aseh, what shall I do? Sharei gedolei hador nitma'uba. Why? Because we know that it's very possible that there were problematic yichus genealogical situations, even within the families of the greatest rabbis and greatest scholars of our time. You know, who's going to know what their great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents and so on and so forth. Okay? Savala ka Rabbi Yitzchak. He was of the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak, the Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Says Rabbi Yitzchak, Mishpacha shenitma'a nitma'a. Okay? That a family that had become impure, okay?
No, had become assimilated.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, shenitma, the family that had this impurity in it, eventually nitma. That impurity became mixed, assimilated, mixed in, etc., etc. Amar Abai, says Abai, Af ananami tanina. So also we teach as follows: Mishpachat Beit Hatzreifa Haitab Ba'aver Hayadeh. There was this family Beit Sreifa, okay, that lived across the Jordan. V'richka ben Sion bezroa, and they were forced to move that distance by some ruffian, some strong-handed person in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, Od Acheret or Acheret, right? Od Acheret. Or we've got another example. Haita, that there was Vikirva ben Sion bezroa, that he brought another family closer into Eretz Yisrael. Okay, by force, right? Kigon Elu, like the following: Eliyahu ba l'tameh v'l'taher l'rachek l'karei. That Elijah comes to make them tameh or tahor, to bring them closer, or to make them farther apart. Kigon Elu diyadim, as those that we know, aval mishpacha shenitma'a nitma'a, but a family that in which yichus issues have become assimilated, okay, that's mixed up and continue. Ta'ana, okay, and further we understand Oda Cheret Haita. It was another case. V'lo ratzu chachamim liglota, and the sages did not want to make it reveal the issue. Aval chachamim mosrim oto lebneihem letalmideihem. But the sages would pass that information on to their own progeny and to their students. That's why I answered that there became a compromise position. Sometimes they made it known public, sometimes that they only kept it within certain circles, shall we say, and in that case, so that those circles could be more stringent in terms of marriage relations.
Why is this so surprising? Didn't you learn that in the time of Ezra, all the tainted families that people
That
had
was 2
come
days
in
ago.
Eretz Yisrael.
Right,
It was
but
known that Eretz Yisrael had problems
well,
like
but
this.
that's the issue.
But it's 200 years late. It's more. It's many hundreds years later
Right.
now. And everybody wants to say, I'm not tainted.
You know,
I mean, nobody wants to admit flaws in his
Ezra, when he did
background.
to Levium, the Levium loved Bethel, and that's why you have less Levium
right,
washing than to the Kohanim.
Mhm.
They had to pay too much Misa
right,
to the
Uh-huh.
Kohanim.
And then they also didn't want to divorce their wives.
right.
Whatever
That's
whatever
another
that
issue.
is.
All right, we'll
But
study.
they had kids already.
Ken Chalst has been teaching about Ezra for the last couple of seasons.
Okay, anyway,
you're
it was
interested
once
in
or
that,
even-
my
or
dear.
twice every 7 years.
Okay,
There
we'll
was-
get to that.
Even the
Wait,
telling the
wait,
kids.
Michael. Hold on. Okay. Pam echad b'shavua. Okay, so when did they inform? Okay, to certain groups. Pam echad b'shavua, once every 7 years, according to one view. Va'amre la pa'amayim b'shavua, and others say twice in 7 years. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Mistabra kemanda amar pam achad b'shavua. It seems logical to say that they would make it known,
Only
pass it on once every 7 years. Kedetanya, as taught in the Braita, Hareini Nazir imlo agale mishpachot. May I be a Nazir with lest I reveal the yichus of certain families. Yihye Nazir v'lo yigale mishpachot. Let him become a Nazareth and not reveal the yichus status of certain families. Amar Rabba bar Barchana, says Rabba bar Barchana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay? Okay. Now, since we're talking about revealing certain information, the Gemara throws in a little sidebar here. Okay? Shem ben Arba Otiot, the divine name that is made up of 4 letters. Right? That's the Yud Kei Vav Kei name, we understand. Chachamim Mosrin Oto L'Talmidehen Pam Echad B'Shavua. That the sages would pass to their students the appropriate pronunciation of the divine name once in 7 years. Okay? Va'amre la, and others say Pa'amayim B'Shavua, twice in 7 years. And now we get a little story here. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. He tells us as follows, Rav Nachman. Mistabra kimanda amar pam echad b'shavua. It seems logical that we would say that it was once in 7 years. Dichtiv. Why? Because we have as a pasuk, Zeh shmi le'olam. Okay, this is my name forever. And notice the question, however, is that le'olam written with the vav or without the vav? Okay, if it's written without the vav, then we understand it as
secret.
right alam, which means basically in private, in secret, right? That's how it's written without the vav. All right, the vav is not present, right? Rava Sava, the Midrashe B'Pirka. Rava thought to teach this publicly in a lesson. Amarli Hahu Saba, and a certain elder reminded him, La'alam Kativ, that it's written without the vav. Okay, and therefore it should be done more in private, in secret. Okay, Rabbi Avina, Rami
Why is it private? Why is it once only 7 years? Why not reveal exactly how it's pronounced?
Because people will be tomei,
Okay.
and they'll hear the word, say the word.
That would be one answer. Okay, as we continue with the Gemara, we're going to see how careful people were, okay, in reciting the divine name. Okay, because the Gemara is going to say Zeh Shemi Le'olam v'Zichri L'Dor Vador.
But we
Okay,
don't even use the substitute. We say shame.
right. I understand that, but I'm simply saying. So the implication is that only under certain circumstances was the divine name actually pronounced the way it should be. Okay, and ultimately we don't even do that. Okay, so let's see as the Gemara continues, we can then appreciate the fact of why is it that even when there could be a theoretical possibility, let's say Kohanim when they duchen, okay, maybe then that would be.
We're all Tomei Meis.
I understand that, but there's more than one explanation. Okay, if theoretically you could argue, maybe that would be an appropriate time to say it, but even then we don't. Okay, so as the Gemara is going to explain to us, we can see the sensitivity to the fact that the divine name, as it is written, is not to be pronounced. Okay, in Sephardic Sidurim, for example, they have certain Sephardic Sidurim have above the Shem Mefurash, they have different osios every time it appears. Okay, because you don't know what the. Right? Okay, let's go back into a mission, our Gemara. Okay, Savar la midrash b'pirka amar le hahusav lam kati. Rabbi Avina Rami kati. He brought up the fact that we have another pasuk that tells us Zeh Shmi, this is my name, ukativ Zeh Zichri, but it's also written this is how I'm to be remembered. I'm to be, in other words, which seems to almost contradict saying that you should say the divine name, right? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu says, right? Lo k'she'ani nichtav ani nikra. Okay, so there the Gemara is telling us, not the way I am called is my name to be pronounced, to be read. Okay, nichtav ani biyud hey v'nikra ba'alef daled. Okay, so in other words, it's written a certain way, but we read it another way. So there, if that's the case, if it's written one way and we don't even read it that way, then how much more so do we not even pronounce it in general in a certain? Okay. Tanu Rabbanan says a new bright. Barishona, okay. Shem ben Shtemes Reyotia, the divine name based on 12 letters, right? Hayu Mosrin Oto Lechol Adam. They originally shared it with any person. Okay. Misheravu Hapritzim, once the number of people that were whose behavior was inappropriate, whether we call that sexual behavior, just general behavior, Adam Lechavero, things like that. Okay. Hayu Mosrino to Litznuyim Shebekuhuna. Then they only gave the name to the most, I'm going to translate Snuim here as the most pious, the most righteous among the Kohanim, right? Vatsnuim Shebekuhuna. And what did even they do? Right, Mel? All right. Mavli'ino to b'ni'imat acheihem hakohanim. They would sort of say it, but they would mumble it. Okay.
It's part of the
okay.
tune.
When they would do the Birkas Kohanim, okay, other Kohanim would say what they were supposed to, and then only these certain ones would recite the actual divine name. Okay. All right. Tanya, and we have a Braita. Amar Rabbi Tarfon, says Rabbi Tarfon, who happened to be a Kohen, remember? Okay.
On both sides.
All right. Well, that's great for him.
No, I
Okay.
mean that's important to know.
All right. Pamechat, one time he says, Aliti achar achi imi. I went up, in other words, onto the duchen, okay, to do Birkas Kohanim with my mother's brother. In other words, my maternal uncle. Right? Leduchen. Vihiteti azni etzel Kohen Gadol. And I directed my ear, he says, towards the Kohen Gadol. All right? Who was there? Vishamati shehevliya shem b'ni'imat achiv hakohanim. And I heard that he sort of mumbled, swallowed the divine name with the other, while the other Kohanim were making their, right? I don't know if it was Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, so Rav Yehuda named Rav, Shem ben Arba'im Ushtayim Otia. The divine name makes the 42 letters. Ein Mosrino To Ela Lamishet Sanua Va'anav. We do not pass that name onto one unless they are pious, righteous, and humble. Va'omed b'chatzi yamav. And they are already at a certain age. Okay? All right? Ve'eno koes. And they're not the kind of person that's quick to be angry. Ve'eno mishtaker. And they're not the kind of person that gets inebriated easily. Okay? Ve'eno ma'amid al midotav. And they're not stringent about their own personal qualities. Okay, that if somebody does an insult to them or things like that. Okay? V'chol hayod o, his hirbo, and one who knows it and is careful about it, right? V'hamishamro b'tahara. Okay, and this person protects the divine name with purity. In other words, again, they don't go saying it, all right? Ahuv lamala, he's beloved above, v'nechmad lamata, and is cherished below, ve'emato mutelet al habriot, and his, I'm going to translate ema here as respect, okay, rather than just fear, is among all of creation, created and items, v'nochel shnei olamim, and he inherits two worlds, ha'olam hazeh, this world, v'ha'olam haba, and the world to come. Right? Amar Shmuel, Mishmei de Saba, and Shmuel said in the name of an elder, okay, Bavel b'cheskat kshera omedet, that those with their yichus in Bavel remain in a presumptive status of being kasher, ad shiodei lach b'meh nifsala, until you know in what manner they became pasul. Okay, so what happens? Sha'ar aratzot, the other lands, b'cheskat pasul min hein omdot, they remain in a status of pasul, questionable, okay, status, mixed status, right? Ad shiodei lecha b'meh nichshira, until you know, okay, for that they have become into a verified, sort of valid status. Eretz Yisrael, muchzak lepasul, land of Israel. Okay, there we have yichus status, where we say that there is this mix, this questionable status. Muchzak lekasher. There you have some that are pasul and some that are kasher in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, muchzak lepasul, pasul, muchzak lekasher, kasher. Okay, ha gufa. Here now, let's come back to the question. Kasher, isn't this problematic? If you have various in Eretz Yisrael, some yes, some no. Okay, amarta muchzak lepasul, pasul. You said those where there's a presumption of being invalid are invalid. Hastama, that would seem to be in general the case. Okay, but
we don't know for sure if there's
right, hastama, isn't that in general? But then wait, hold on. Hastama, no, I have a mark there that the way that she or I heard didn't read it together. Okay, hastama, kasher, but no, in general, shouldn't we consider them kasher? That's how he explained it. Vahadar tane muchzak. But here, nevertheless, you taught there is a presumption. The kasher, kasher, that those that are kasher. Ha stama pasul. Okay, if that's the case, then shouldn't there just be in general that they would be considered pasul, invalid? Okay, Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna bar Tachlifa, Mishmei de Rav, in the name of Rav, lo kasha. No, we don't have a problem here. Why? Kan lahasi o isha. In one case, we're talking about in regards to marrying a woman. Kan lahotzi isha miyado. In the other situation, we're talking about a situation to put a situation, we're creating where the person must divorce the woman. Okay? Amar Rav Yossi, says Rav Yossi. Okay? As follows. Kol shesichato b'Bavel, anyone whose speech is Babylonian, Masein lo isha, one can marry then a woman without a question of yichus. Right? Va'idna, and today, nowadays, the ikaramai, where there are people that are deceitful, okay, chayshinan, we need to be suspect. Zeiri havaka mishtamet mina de Rabbi Yochanan. Zeiri, it seems, had begun to evade, or someone to say might forgot, that which was taught by Rabbi Yochanan. Dahava amarle nasiv barte. Okay, in other words, Zeiri was trying to evade becoming in contact with Rabbi Yochanan. Why? Because Rabbi Yochanan was trying to encourage him, Zeiri, to marry his daughter. Okay? What happens? Yom echad, havu ka'azle ba'orcha. One day, Zeiri and Rabbi Yochanan were traveling together along the road. Matu la'urkama demaya. And they came across a depression, a pool of water in the road. What did Zeiri do? Ar kaveh the Rabbi Yochanan akatfe. He placed Rabbi Yochanan on his shoulders, okay, and carried him when they went through, right? The kama avarle, and he brought him through the water. Rabbi Yochanan then says to him, Amarle, oraitan kshera, our Torah seems valid for you. Benatan lo kashran, our daughters aren't valid for you. Okay, in other words, you can come here from Bavel to Eretz, all right, to learn, okay, Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, but are you telling me our daughters in Eretz Yisrael aren't valid enough to marry? Okay, my date. Okay, what's the situation? Ilema midatnan asara yuchsina luba mi Bavel. If it's based on the Mishnah that we learned here at the beginning of the parak, that 10 categories came up from Bavel. Kahane Levi'ai. Okay, you had Kohanim, you had Levi'im. Atu Kahane Levi'ai, Yisrael, Kulhu Saliku. Are we going to say that all of the Kohanim and Levi'im, okay, and Israel, they all came up? In other words, there must have been some left in Bavel, but there are some that were in Eretz Yisrael too. Ki hechi ishtiyur mahani, okay, ishtiyur nami mahani. Okay, the same way that there were some that were left there were others left there as well.
The tainted groups.
Okay, in other words, not everybody of all categories came to Eretz Yisrael. Some of the, let's say, more hierarchical, higher status, whatever, came, but also it had to have been some of the lower status came to Eretz Yisrael. But some of them had to have remained in Bavel as well. Okay.
Yeah, but there were still Jews in Bavel.
Right. Okay, so what happened? Okay. Right. Well, let's see. Ish tamitatai ha da'amar. He overlooked or forgot what was said. Da'amar Rabbi Elazar, who said as follows: Lo ala Ezra mi Bavel ad shesa'a kisolet nikiya. That Ezra did not come up, okay, from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael until he made Bavel like a fine flour. In other words, that everybody of lower yichus status came up with it. Okay, va'ala ula, okay, uikla lepompadita. Okay, so we now go on. Sorry. And Ula went up, right? Right?
Ula Ikla, the pumpkin.
Right.
Ula visited pumpkin.
Okay, so Ula went up and he came to visit in Pampadita, the Bay Rabbi Yehuda, to the academy of Rabbi Yehuda. Chazia the Rav Yitzchak, Bered the Rav Yehuda, and he happened to notice that Rav Yitzchak, who was the son of Rav Yehuda, who must, right, de Gadol, that he was already an adult, in other words, above a certain age, velo nasiv, and he wasn't married. Let's assume he was at least 18. I'm just guessing, throwing that up. Okay, exactly. Okay. Amarle, he said to him, my tama lo kamen sivle mar itatala bre. So he says to Rabbi Yehuda, what's the reason that the master hasn't married off his son to somebody? Okay. Amarle. So Rav Yehuda responds, mi yadana mehecha ansiv. Who knows with, I'm going to translate it here, with whom I can arrange a marriage. Okay. Amarle. He says to him, Atu anan, miyadenen mehecha ka'atyan, dilma mehanach. How do we know? Or since when, really, I like it that one. Since when do we know from whence we have come? Okay. And therefore, how do we know who's appropriate for us to marry? Okay. As it's written, Nashim b'tzion inu b'tulot ba'arei Yehuda. Namely, when taken from Echa, when soldiers came and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, they raped, they pillaged, etc., etc. How do we know that perhaps a woman could have had a child under those circumstances?
And he held
and
that their
okay, and the descendants would be problematic, right? Okay. V'chitema, and if you want to say, oved kochavim ve'eved, that if a Gentile or a servant, haba'al bat Yisrael havlad kasher, and if you want to hold that such a progeny is valid, okay, v'dilma mehanach dichtiv baho. But perhaps then, from there too, we have a pasuk that says, "Hashochvim al mitot shem v'sruchim al arisotam." Okay, that they laid on beds of ivory and they allowed their semen to flow everywhere, anywhere. Okay, va'amar Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina. He says, what are these referred to? Elu b'nei adam ha-mashtinim mayim b'fnei mitoteim arumi. These were those individuals who used the chamber pot. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. Okay, that right there by their divan.
While they were naked.
Okay, and they were totally naked. Umegadef ba, okay, Rabbi Abahu, and Rabbi Abahu cursed at this situation. Yihachi, if that's the case, Hainu dichti, that's why another pasuk says, Lachein ata yiglu barosh golim, mishum demashtinim mayim b'fnei mitoteim arumim yiglu barosh golim. Okay, right. So citing the pasuk there that. Right? All right. Ella, in other words, they should be among the first that get exiled.
That as a punishment for
right.
that behavior.
Ella, rather, Amar Rabbi Abahu, says Rabbi Abahu, Elu b'nei Adam, she'ochlim v'shotim ze im ze. These are people who sit together and they eat together, right? And not only that, umadbikin mitoteim zobrizo, and they place their divans. They're beds, right? But they're also, in other words, if they're eating and drinking, okay, you're talking about.
Yeah, but keep going.
Yeah, I know it. Okay, that's my point. Is that they place these together. Umachlifin neshoteim zelas. What he's talking about is that, like Roman orgies. Okay, they eat, drink, etc. Okay, that's what he's comparing it to. Okay. That was not just an act at night. Okay, this was during during these orgy meals. All right. Okay. Right? So what happens? Umasrichim arsotam b'shikvat zera. And they ejaculate. They're all over the place. She'ena shalehem, on the divans and beds that belong to others. Okay? We could get into a separate issue here, but we won't. Amarle says, "Hechi na'avi." So how shall we proceed? What shall we do?
About getting married.
Okay. Amarle, he said to him, Zil bata shtikuta. You follow after that individuals who are on the silent side, on the private side, right? Ki hai debadke b'nei ma'arava, just as they examine and check in Eretz Yisrael, okay, the people there. Ki minsu be shrei bahade hadadi. When you find that there's an argument or a disagreement, okay, between different people, okay, chazu haiminahu dekatim v'shati. See which one first is the one who is silent first. In other words, who doesn't throw out back answers and argue and things like that. Amre haimiuchast fe. They say there that one then has better midot, has a better
Better
genealogical yichus status. Okay?
But not saying it's necessarily totally pure.
No, no, he's not saying it's totally pure, but it implies that the person, okay, has a better yichus,
The more
because,
pleasant person
okay,
is.
because their midot are better.
Pleasant person.
Right? Okay, Amar Rav, says Rav, Shtikute de Bavel Hainu Ichusa. Okay, you're saying that an example of silence on the part of Babylonians is a sign of their yichus. Aini, is that really the case? Va ikla Rav. But we have the situation that Rav, okay, arrived, right? Labei Rab Shapir Hala, okay, into a particular location, academy. Ubadak Baho, and he examined them. My love b'yichusa. What is their status in regards to their yichus? Lo b'shtikuta. It was not in regards to silence. Hachi ka'amar lahu. This is what he said. Beduk, right? Beduko. Okay. In regards to examining it, ishatke, ilo shatke. If they were silent or they weren't silent. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav says in the name of Rav, Ve'im ra'ita shnei b'nei adam. If you see two people, shem mitgarim ze b'zeh, okay, that are in argument one with another, right? Shemetz pasul yesh be'achad mehem. All right, perhaps there is a aspect of invalidity among one. Ve'ein manichim oto ledabek echad b'chavero, and thus they don't. This argumentative nature doesn't allow one to socialize and become friendly, close enough, and therefore would not. All right, what's the advantage there? If they're not willing to talk with them, like mentioned, they're not going to, certainly not going to marry those families, aren't going to marry one another. Amar Rabbi Yoshua says Ben Levi, Im ra'ita shtei mishpachot hamitgarot zo bazo. If you see that there are two families, hamitgarot, I want to translate it as argumentative, and not so much hatred, but animosity is the word I was looking for. Okay, one to another. Shemetz pasul yesh be'achat mehem. Then there must be some negative, invalid attribute among them. Ve'ein manichim ota ledabek bechaverta. And it doesn't permit one to attach themselves, in other words, marriage, to the other. Amar Rav Papa Saba, says Rav Papa Saba Mishmei the Rav, in the name of Rav, Bebal, right? Bavel Bere'iyah. Okay? Now he's going to give a whole discussion. Okay? If we're talking about that people in Bavel have a certain positive yichus, how do you know the boundaries that you could look at to find an appropriate shidduch. Okay,
What is the
all right. What's the areas? Okay, so Bavel Bere'iyah. With Bavel, you can tell by looking around. In other words, that's the primary section of Bavel between the two rivers. If anybody needs a map, I've got extra maps here. Art Scroll should have a map. Okay, and one of the next pages. That this map is taken from Art Scroll in case you don't have it available. Okay. Okay, Mishan, which was an island. Okay, right? Mita, their death. Right, implying there's
Mishan Mita means that virtually
Most of the
everyone in
people there were
Mishan
have
were
have a,
Mamzerim and
the
nobody would marry
yichus,
them. So
right?
they
The
died
yichus in that island is not viable. Okay, Madai. Okay,
out.
Madai Chola. Okay, and the Persia area. Okay, that is sick. In other words, questionable. Elam Goseset in the area of Elam.
They're almost
Okay, they're on their way of dying. Okay, Uma ben Cholim Legosasim. So what's the difference, asks the Gemara, between those who are sickly and those that are close to death? Rov Cholim Lechayim. Most people, ideally, even when they're sick, do become well, can recover. Rov Gosasim Lamita. But most of those that are on the way to their death, like in Elam, ultimately die. In other words, it indicates that in that community, that's what's going to happen. Okay, that ultimately the yichus is going to be
well, nobody will marry
improved.
them. So
Okay,
they'll die out.
or opposite. Ad Hechan hu Bavel, and now we get more directly to the boundaries. Rav Amar ad Nahar Azak. Rav says up to the Azak River. Shmuel Amar ad Nahar Yonai. He said up to the Yonai River.
Which is further north.
Okay, right. So there, if you're looking at the map, it's a question of how far up on each of the rivers. All right. Okay. So one is in the upper reaches of the Tigris, things like that.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
little bit lower.
Where is it? Ad Nahar Yonai, La'ayu b'diglat ad Hecha. When we say the upper reaches of the Tigris, how far? Rav Amar ad Bagda Avona, until the cities of Bagda and Avona. And some want to suggest Bagda here is Baghdad. Okay. Ushmuel Amar ad Moshchani, until Moshchani, velo Moshchani Buchlau. And are we saying that the city of Moshchani is not included? Va'amar Rabbi Chia. But didn't Rabbi Chia bar Abba say as follows in the name of Shmuel? Moshchani harehi kigola. That Moshchani is like considered outside of the Bavel area.
No, it's
and it's part of
Bavel, because it's the where we were exiled to.
Okay, well, we'll get to it. Okay, it's part of the Gola. What do we mean? Is it beyond, okay, or not? The Yuchsin, if we're talking about in regards to Yechus, okay, Ela ad Moshchani. But from the Yuchsin, it's up till Moshchani. Umoshchani Bichlal. And Moshchani is included in regards to Yuchsin as a viable place to find. Okay, all right, let's finish up. L'tachtit b'diglat ad hecha, the lower part of the Tigris, far low.
Far south.
Okay, how far south do we go? Amar Rav Shmuel, says Rav Shmuel, ad apaima tata, to the lower apaima. Tate apaima ha. But there were two apaimas, and you can see it here on the map. Okay, upper apaima and lower apaima. Havyan chada ila'ata. There was one that was higher, v'chada tatiyata, and one that was lower. Chada kshera, one where the yichus was viable, v'chada psula, one where the yichus situation was not viable. Ubein chada lechada, and between one and the other, parsa. Okay, there was a certain parsang, certain measurement. The kakapde ahadadi, and these two, the people in these two communities, were very stringent with one another. Va'afilu nora lo mashli, they would not even lend fire one to another. Okay, right? Ahadare, I'm sorry, ahadade, right? V'hasimanech, okay, all right, right, right. V'hadade v'simanech d'psulta. Okay, and therefore that's how you know that that was already a negative area. Had the mishta'aye mishneit la'ayom befrat. Okay, and what about the other river going further up? Right, happens.
Euphrates. No, now we're talking about the Euphrates.
Right, that's what I said. It's the other river, not the Tigris. Okay, what happens there? Befrat, the Euphrates. Ad hecha, Ravamar ad akra to tulbanikane. Okay, he said up to a certain place. Ushmuel amar ad gishra de be parat, until the bridge that crosses the Euphrates.
Which we
Okay,
Havamina is that it's higher.
okay, right. V'Rabbi Yochanan amar ad ma'avrat de gozma, and Rabbi Yochanan said no, it was still another location. Light Abai. Abai then was cursing this out. V'itema Rav Yosef, and others said with Rav Yosef, Ad Rav. Okay, regarding Rav, was he only challenging Rav? Ad Rav liet, ad Shmuel lo liet. Rav's answer, he cursed out. Shmuel's, he didn't challenge, didn't curse out. Ela liet ad Rav v'kol shekain ad Shmuel. But he also challenged and cursed out not only Rav, but also Shmuel's statement, right? V'bayat ema, and if you want, I would say leolam ad Rav liet. With Rav, he's cursed out. Ad Shmuel lo liet. Shmuel's, he did not, right? V'gishra de Bei Prat, and that the bridge on the over the Euphrates, right? The Ta'ata Havakai, okay, that he lay below, and we're just going to finish up.
At that time, the river was
right. Why? There was a question of location. Va'idna hu de lehave parsai, but the Persians had set it and moved the bridge further up, and there was a difference. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Okay.
No, it's the Persians, it says.